Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're tackling what is arguably one of the most profound, literally mind-bending scientific mysteries of human existence. Does our consciousness actually survive bodily death? I mean, it's a question that has haunted, comforted, and completely fascinated humanity for millennia, right? But listen, today, we are not looking at this through the lens of folklore or traditional religion or spooky ghost stories. We're going to look strictly at the hard data and examine the actual scientific research surrounding what's known in the field as the survival hypothesis.
Now, you might be wondering, why does studying this actually matter from a practical standpoint? Well, consider this absolutely staggering number: $2 billion. That is the estimated size of the psychic services industry in the United States alone, and it's a market that's just steadily growing year after year. A massive chunk of that whole industry is dedicated specifically to mediumship and afterlife communication services. So regardless of your personal stance on the validity of these phenomena, that massive figure really highlights an intense, undeniable public demand. It proves our deep-rooted collective fascination with the afterlife. But, it goes way deeper than just casual curiosity. Check out the 2018 Chapman University Survey of American Fears. It reveals this stark, really touching contrast. Over 56% of people are either afraid or very afraid of their loved ones dying, compared to just under 28% who actually fear their own death. I think this really hits the nail on the head regarding the deep empathy embedded in the human experience. It links what is often brushed off as a fringe niche topic directly to a universal human anxiety. We're just desperate to know, for sure, that the people we love are going to be okay after they pass.
So here's our scientific roadmap for today. First, we'll define the survival hypothesis. Second, out-of-body experiences. Third, near-death experiences. Fourth, mental mediumship. And finally, number 5, the super psi problem.
Okay, moving right into part 1, the survival hypothesis, defining the unknown.
So the crucial point is that the survival hypothesis is simply the concept that a disembodied consciousness, or, some non-physical aspect of our human personality, might actually survive bodily death, at least for a time. And in scientific parapsychology, this is examined strictly empirically. We're completely separating the rigorous scientific study of postmortem survival from traditional religious or spiritual beliefs. We just want to know exactly what the data sets.
And this brilliantly illustrates where we are right now. Within the broader scientific landscape of parapsychology, the survival of bodily death sits in its very own distinct sector. It overlaps with, but is completely separate from, things like extrasensory perception, ESP, and it's separate from mind-matter interaction. It is a highly specific, focused area of study.
All right, part 2, out-of-body experiences, or OBEs.
So this is the first major piece of evidence we're going to examine, shifting our focus to look at phenomena where consciousness appears to literally detach from the physical body. To understand what this actually feels like, consider this incredibly vivid personal anecdote shared by a researcher. So during a really stressful college midterm period, he was sitting with classmates around a table in a library. Suddenly, he felt this intense sensation of being pulled right out of his body. For 3 to 4 minutes, he experienced an OBE, floating from an elevated, disembodied vantage point above the library table. He could literally look down and observe his own tired expression, watch his classmates working, and even see hidden people deep in the stacks that he totally hadn't noticed before from his physical seat. Crazy, right? But, anecdotes aren't enough for rigorous science. In the 1980 Alex Tannous experiment, researchers enlisted a subject who claimed he could induce OBEs completely on demand. They had him project his consciousness into a totally sealed box. Inside that chamber was a target image and a highly sensitive motion detector. Amazingly, the study found a statistically significant correlation between his accurate remote viewing of the target image and actual physical alerts triggered on the motion detector. It really suggested some kind of actual physical or kinetic effect was directly associated with his out-of-body projection.
Now on to part 3, near-death experiences. These are clinical phenomena reported by roughly 5% of the US and European populations.
To really test this, we look at the AWARE study, which ran from 2008 to 2014 and systematically tracked these events. The study found that a small percentage of cardiac arrest survivors did exhibit some level of awareness and could actually report accurate details about their surroundings while they were clinically dead. Now, NDEs cause profound, absolutely undeniable personal transformations for the people who have them.
However, definitive proof of survival still remains elusive. Why? Because science really struggles to entirely rule out alternative, highly complex biological brain activity during these trauma events. It's like a giant puzzle we haven't quite solved yet.
Moving right along to Part 4, Mental Mediumship Research.
Here we shift our focus to assisted after-death communication. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth can you scientifically study a medium? Well, modern researchers draw a hard, definitive line between physical and mental mediumship. Physical mediumship focuses on things like ectoplasm or levitation. Honestly, it's highly prone to fraud and incredibly difficult to control in a lab setting. Mental mediumship, however, focuses purely on information transfer. This is a real game changer because it gives researchers actual, tangible data points. It's testable via specific messaging, which makes it so much easier to study experimentally and systematically.
To do this properly, researchers use meticulous methods, like the really rigorous Windbridge Research Center protocol. It works like this. Step 1. Utilize heavily pre-screened mediums. Step 2. Implement multiple levels of experimental blinding. This is absolutely crucial to entirely eliminate fraud, cold reading, or rater bias. Step 3. The mediums provide readings for deceased individuals. And Step 4. Completely blinded sitters score the intended readings against randomly assigned decoy readings to see if the information actually matches up. Let's move to and see how this builds into actual data. In a 2015 study involving 58 readings in 20 different mediums, the blinded sitters scored their intended readings as significantly more accurate than the decoys. And this is backed by broader meta-analyses too, supporting what researchers call anomalous information reception. Put simply, under tightly controlled lab conditions, some mediums genuinely access accurate information about the deceased that they couldn't possibly have known.
Which brings us to Part 5, Survival versus the Super Psi Problem.
All right, get ready for the ultimate scientific plot twist. This complicates the whole shebang. Even if a medium accesses impossible information, how do we actually know for sure it's coming from a dead person? Enter the mind-bending super psi hypothesis. This theory suggests that mediums aren't actually talking to the dead at all. Instead, it argues they're subconsciously using immense psychic abilities, like telepathy, to read the minds of the living sitters. They gather accurate information psychically, and then just unconsciously present it as a message from the afterlife. No way, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the mediums themselves respond to this super psi theory. In a survey of over 100 self-identified mediums, a staggering 96% reported that they can clearly tell the difference between communicating with a dead entity versus just receiving psychic information about a living person. Only 4% said no. This clear difference in how it actually feels strongly undermines a super psi theory, suggesting that from the experiencer's perspective at least, mediumship and psychic functioning are completely different phenomena.
So, where does that leave us? Let me leave you with this provocative question to end our explainer today. Which phenomenon do you think provides the best support for survival, and how would you test it? Are you more compelled by those out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, or the really tightly controlled data from mental mediumship? I challenge you to think like a researcher today and consider how you would design an experiment to definitively solve the ultimate mystery of human consciousness. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.